Chag Sameach. Wishing you all the simcha that's possible, all the joy in every little thing this week of Sukkot during this strange time when we haven't been so together in the sukkah and we have not seen one another for shaking the lulav. I pray that you've taken the chance to either connect in with some of the ideas of Sukkot, which center on joy and center on finding a little bit of the sense of fearlessness within fragility, and taking and holding up life and all its gifts during this holiday season after Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur have passed. One of the celebrations that used to occur in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple during Sukkot, is one that we don't reenact or think about this week very often, except in certain communities, Eidot, Jewish communities, that continue along having festivities for what are called Simchat Beit HaShoeva. That is, there were water drawing festivals, or water libations in the temple itself, in order to celebrate that very, very staff of life, if you will, that sustaining resource, water, H2O, mayim. The Mishnah in chapter 4 describes the kind of joy we seek to celebrate and increase, and it's the joy of provision, of God's providing for us the sustenance we need. We know that Sukkot is called Chag HaAsif, the festival of the harvest, but we also know that there's great celebration of water, and it could be even that the lulav and the etrog, these plants, are very connected to the very celebration of having enough water for plants of all types to grow in the world, and for those types of plants we might not even suspect could flourish, that they would flourish in places, drawing the water forth from the earth in order to feed their roots, then have them grow. Ha'halel v'hasimcha shmona. All 8 days of this festival shall we rejoice, that is, the 7 days of Sukkot, and the 1 day of Shmini Atzeret, or in diaspora too, but we shall rejoice the 7 days of Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret, and there is water connections to both of them. The Mishnah goes on in the same chapter to say, in terms of building and bringing and creating joy, Nisuch hamayim ketzad. How was the water libation performed? It describes a wonderful ceremony that we do not do in the middle of our sanctuary. But listen to this. A golden flask holding 3 logs of water was filled from the spring of Shiloach. And they arrived at the water gate, and they sounded a tikiyah on the shofar, also a truah, and another tikiyah. And the priest went up the ascent of the altar and turned to his left, and there were 2 silver bowls. Rabbi Judah says they were made of plaster, but they looked silver because their surfaces were darkened from wine. They had each a hole, like a slender snout, one being wide and the other narrow, so that both emptied at the same time. And the one on the west was for water, and the one on the east for wine. And if he poured the flask of water into the bowl for wine, or that of wine into that for water, he has fulfilled his obligation. And Rabbi Yehuda said, with 1 log, that is a measurement of water, he performed the ceremony of the water libation all 8 days. To the priest who performed that water libation ceremony, they used to say, raise your hand. For one time, a certain man poured out the water over his feet, and unfortunately all the people pelted him with etrogs. Now, we get a real life description here of crime committed in the temple precincts, the right way to do this ritual, and the way to be careful during this great joyous celebration. The reason why you have any kind of public service announcement about doing it right is because we don't want anyone to take it too far. There was such joy and celebration in the temple precincts during this time of the water libations that you hear about sages juggling, officials fire breathing, dancing going on among folks that you would never expect to just let loose. The Mishnah says, if you have not seen the joy of the water libations of Simchat Beit HaShoeva, you've not experienced joy at all. The message is, find joy in knowing that God has provided us the water we need to survive. Where would we be without it? Cosmically, scientifically, agriculturally, to quench our thirst. This kind of theme running through the holidays of water and joy and judgment, because of this aspect that Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret are still connected to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, comes through, and so we take and make great celebrations, and Hakarat Hatov, we recognize the greatness of God for the water we're provided, and we also know that on Shmini Atzeret, we want the world to be judged righteously and for the exactly right amount of water that we should have in the coming year. That's what Tefillat Geshem is really all about. We say a special prayer, and we say, on the merit of our ancestors, for Abraham's sake, do not withhold water. Ba'avuro al timna mayim, b'tzidko. For Isaac's righteousness, grant the gift of water. Chon chashrat mayim. Ba'avuro al timna mayim. For Jacob's sake, do not withhold water. For Moses' sake, don't withhold water. For Aaron the priest's sake, don't withhold water. And for the entire people's sake, Zachor Shneim Asar Shvatim, remember all 12 tribes who serve you, God. You brought them through water. We remind you of the great, incredible power of the miracle of the splitting of the sea. Shehavarta b'gizrat mayim. You split the sea. Himtakta lamo midrirut mayim. For their sake, you made bitter waters sweet. You gave us the secret. And it is with that note of Tefillat Geshem, on that note of making bitter water sweet, that I often think about how to take these ancient water celebrations and the gratitude and recognition of the goodness of God's provision of water into our times. How do we do it? Do we come and make water libations and ceremonies and celebrations within the synagogue experience here? We do not. Do we have vessels? Sounds like if we wanted to update that ritual, we could have taken bowls, be they silver or plaster, and brought forth pitchers, beautiful pitchers of water. I like to think about it in terms of what pitcher would I use? My grandmother once gave me, Aleha Shalom, my grandmother gave me a beautiful pitcher with some silver, a handle, and the spout is just so beautiful. Maybe something like that could have been the pitcher for a water ritual in our time. But that's not what we do. We do take the lulav and the etrog, and we do connect the idea that we need water in the world for the agricultural harvests that we hope for, the bounty. We hope that there's enough water so that there won't be an overwhelming amount of fires that roar through where they shouldn't. But we want to liken this notion of helping draw forth the water that God should grant the Jewish people and the world today in the way that we think about the incredible advancements in water technology in the land of Israel. And we can follow many of those, as we did here at Or Zarua one day after Kiddush, when we heard from the JNF about all the investments in desalinization and the water technologies that we're sharing with countries throughout the Middle East, including Jordan and Egypt and other neighbors. And we also think about the Israeli nonprofit, at least one of them that I'd like to share with you today on this video. In a moment, I'm going to share my screen and screen just about a 5-minute video from an incredible nonprofit who is sweetening the water and providing for several communities in Africa the kind of experience with water, the resource of clean water that we often take for granted. The way to update our connection to the joy our ancestors felt about water and praying to God that God would sweeten the waters that we need is to give tzedakah to those agencies and organizations that are truly investing in creating potable water and potential water sources for the agriculture that we need to feed both the Jewish people and all peoples who live in Israel, the Middle East, and throughout Africa particularly, and beyond. Let me now share this video, which is a video that you can find on the web, but I thought we should spend a little time during this holiday and think about where we might want to direct our tzedakah contributions. Either, I would say, in my tzedakah plan, just to tell you personally, I truly appreciate all of the great projects that JNF does in terms of investments in water technology and advancing clean water accessibility throughout the Middle East and beyond. And I really appreciate what this incredible organization whose video I'm about to show you does, and I'll talk more about them after you see it.
Typhoid, diarrhea, vomiting. People use the very water. People get sick.
Napata mgonjwa, homa, malaria.
Darkness, because we don't have light. We use kerosene. We don't deliver the services as we must.
It was very difficult for us children to study at night.
Kabla hatujapata mradi wa maji, tulikuwa tunahangaika sana kwa ajili ya kutafuta maji.
People drink muddy water, children studying without having a light. Even the mother couldn't give birth because the health center doesn't have a light at night. And for us at Innovation Africa, we want to change that.
Innovation Africa was founded 10 years ago with a very simple mission: to bring Israeli technologies to transform schools, medical centers, but most importantly, to pump water.
When we reach to communities and you mention the word water, at that time you see the smile on faces of these people.
We identify the village that are in need of water. We build a tower and we distribute the water taps all around the village.
The first transformation we see ever
their skins improve.
Any human being should have access to clean water.
We have water under the ground, the sun is shining every day. With the knowledge and Israeli technology, we can make a change, and forever.
Once we do it, it completely transforms the village.
I believe Innovation Africa can change Africa.
What an incredible decade of investment in clean water spigots and pipelines and access to what I think so often we take for granted, especially here in America. While there have been droughts, we've prayed for our friends and neighbors around our own nation. This incredible work was begun by an Israeli startup, nonprofit, and we see how big a difference it can make in the lives of villagers and the lives of townsfolk who simply don't have the access that we know they ought to when it comes to their skin or to worse conditions that might affect lives. The investment in clean water seems like a no-brainer tzedakah go. And I encourage everyone during this season of Sukkot, during this festival of water libations, at least it was in temple times, to find a way to connect with some organization and the right kind of connection to further the joy we can know when we just have the right amount to drink. So, to review, it's a time of simcha, it's a time of joy. The Mishnah says it all 8 days, meaning over Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret, you shall find that joy. We don't only have Hallel and the rituals of Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah that we know in our time. We can look back towards the Mishnah and understand from the rabbis that water libations and the ceremony of water drawing was done the entire festival. Those festivities led to unbridled joy. Water in amidst the land of Israel, pulled from a spring and ritualized to show their appreciation and gratitude for this very basic resource that God provided. Today, we don't do water rituals. We don't have pitchers and bowls, and we don't, of course, splash around in any water in amidst our sacred sanctuary. And thusly, we connect with the idea that we can further the hope that we've expressed in our prayer for rain on Shmini Atzeret. And that hope is in the merit of our ancestors. May you, God, and may we as partners be part of sweetening the waters that are necessary for agricultural bounty, for clean skin, for quenching thirst. And we do it by connecting to organizations like the JNF, like Innovation Africa, Israeli-based nonprofit, like other organizations who seek to create the kind of access to clean water that's necessary in our world today. That is true simcha, Jewishly. Not just happiness, but true simcha. May we all know the true simcha of this holiday season. Chag Sameach.